Hi everyone! Lately I've been playing a lot of the Titan Quest 2 Early Access. I already made a video about this a few days ago, and today I want to show off a build, probably the best build that I have discovered, that I think is really fun to play, and maybe you guys want to try out for yourself. This is an Elementalist, a Earth plus Storm combo, and is based on Roiling Magma and a Ring of Flame. It effectively plays a little bit like Righteous Fire from Path of Exile. You see this big ring of flame around me that grows larger and larger thanks to the overload mechanic, and it does a lot of damage. With my level 23 character or so, this is not like a farmed up character or something like that. I just kind of played through the story and I didn't really like deck it out with any crazy stuff. I can make this tick for like 2,000-3,000 per second on top of the actual magma balls that I'm throwing all the time. So it has a lot of damage output, it melts these bosses in 5 to 10 seconds or so, but the ultimate strength is actually just like the insane farming speed. Because you're a storm character, you have the teleport, which is the by far best movement ability in the game, and you can just fly through the maps, and this Ring of Fire melts everything instantly as you run. So here's just an example of me running through the map, and you see how stuff just kind of melts in the circle as they touch it, and I don't even have to cast my Roiling Magma at like a specific target, but even that does so much damage that I can kind of like 2-tap even the big guys and the elites and so on. And yeah, it's just like an absolute blast to play this. Now, of course, there's not that much content in Titan Quest 2 right now, but eventually Act 2 will come out and the other acts will come out, and this is one of the first characters that I'm planning to continue, just because of how fun and how fast it is. I also want to highlight that I have a Titan Quest channel on my Discord, so right now it's just in the other games category, so you might have to turn on the like all channels here if you go here. And here I also have the builds pinned, so right now we don't have like a build planner or something like that, but at least you kind of get the idea of what I was doing here. I have done a total of 8 builds, 8 playthroughs in this early access. I've played for like 45 hours or so. I had an absolute blast. And this is just one of the builds I wanted to show off. So here's my character. There's nothing really special with the stats that you really need in order to make this work, but a lot of life regeneration and energy regeneration obviously helps, because you also have this overload mechanic where you deal damage to yourself. So when I cast, you see that I have this debuff here on the right, and that does damage to me. The more fire and lightning res has, the less damage it deals, but you also want to try to out-regen that. What I did, for example, was that I invested into the barrier, so I actually have a lot of points in the barrier, and that just easily takes care of this, but I can reach like 60 plus overload stacks, and this is actually what carries the circle being larger and larger, as you can see here. So this goes really large and then does more damage, and this is based on this overload mechanics. And on top of that, the Roiling Magma also deals more damage with this. Another thing you see here is that I have a lot of energy, and I also try to reserve as little as possible of it, so I actually spec into like less reservation on Earth Enchantment, for example. The reason for that is also Roiling Magma. It does more damage and consumes more mana and gives you more overload the more energy you have. So having like maximum energy or having like less energy reserved is also useful instead of just trying to stay at the normal value. Other than that, we're trying to scale area of effect damage, fire damage, maybe some cast speed, but that's kind of secondary. And the rest is just kind of, you know, maybe less cooldowns for your teleports, just to go a bit faster, or more movement speed and so on. So I managed to find a moon disc here, which kind of has really good stats for this stuff. So there is cast speed, move speed, energy, and so on. This is very nice, and this helps this build quite a lot. But this is like not really a required item. You can also just have a normal shield and get like a lot of health regen, for example. As for the skills, so here's the setup. Roiling Magma is where you get started. So I started with Earth and then I chose Storm afterwards. And you see here, I actually don't really have anything in Storm besides the Blink. So this is basically at the very end of the playthrough, you can get that. And otherwise, it's basically exactly only like an Earth build until you like maybe pick up some of these passives here. So one notable passives are, for example, the extra energy and extra regen, there's extra barrier, and then later when you have the blink unlocked, you also get this overload stuff. But yeah, you will basically play only Earth for a long time. And I actually also played just Roiling Magma for the start, because you also have to get to tier 3 to get a Ring of Flame. So it will take a few levels to actually unlock this. So the modifiers I chose here are those 3 here on the left. So we have the overload. This is like a massive multiplier. You also refund your energy, but then you get this overload mechanic. So basically you deal damage to yourself and you have to out heal it either with a potion, with the barrier, or with dive regen. So you kind of need to min-max this depending on what the character can handle at that point. Also, for example, the more cooldown you have, the more often you can press your barrier, and then you can more easily deal with this, but you want to try to get overload maxed out as soon as possible. And then the grandeur as well. So here, this is the energy mechanic. And well, similar with the overload, here we refund our energy, and here we spend a lot of energy, and they actually work together. So that when you have a lot of maximum energy, you spend a lot, but you get half of it back, so it doesn't actually spend that much, but the damage goes up a lot the more energy you have. So this is why you want to generally have a lot of energy and also try to keep it high so that you get more out of this effect. And then the remaining points just go into enhanced damage. Here's one point in Flame Volley. I just picked this up on every single Earth build. This is just kind of free real estate. We put 1 point in orbit, so it shoots automatically, does a bit of extra damage. Nothing really crazy, but later on it actually opens up a synergy with the Flame Volley trigger on Ignite, so that you can also get free Ignites, which burns enemies. And then eventually I would also invest into this resistant reduction here so that we get even more fire damage out of this. But this is something for, you know, whenever higher levels come out basically, and maybe at level 30 or so I would have that kind of stuff. And then you have even more DPS. Here's Earth Enchantment. This is mostly less energy reservation, so you want to have as much as possible, as I mentioned. If there's more points, you can also like buff this and just get more power out of it, or maybe also invest into the resistances. Here you get a lot of res pretty easily, and this also helps, for example, with the overload mechanic, because the more fire res you have, the easier it gets. And here's Ring of Flame. So we have the extra damage to close enemies, so you can kind of just like stand on top of a boss, for example, to burn them more. Then with the Enhanced Amplify, this is something I would invest more points in once I get more levels. And here's also Overload, this is the big one. Similar with the Rolling Magma, you want to try to spam Rolling Magma to get the Overload, and then here you get the radius and the damage, and this like really starts popping off. So this goes from like a few hundred ticks or so to like 3000 damage ticks, and it hits like the entire screen at some point. Here we have the barrier. So you see I have 15 points invested. So one good thing here is the fast barrier. This just gives it a shorter cooldown and also has a better conversion rate. So you spend less energy when you press it. This is very nice. I would recommend to pick up like 1 or 2 points in barrier here really early as well to counter the overload. And here's also enduring barrier. So at least 1 point in there early on is also very nice, because it kind of regenerates barrier that is being drained by your overload. So it kind of goes against that. So you see this here, for example, when I spam a little bit, I stack up the overload and I take a lot of damage, and then I press the barrier and it actually out-regens the overload. And at the same time, I get healed based on the barrier I have, so I just go back to full. Now there is one important thing to note here, which is that the overload mechanic right now is bugged with one of the passives. So there is a passive that makes the overload have 100% extra duration, and you take 40% less damage from overload. So this allows you to get more stacks total, and it's spread out more so that you can out-regen it more easily. But this is actually bugged right now, and it does what it says, but on top of that, it also doubles the cooldown of every single ability. So this is a bit of a struggle, and you kind of want to use that, but it makes everything cooldown twice as long basically. So you see this here, for example, I have 9.7 seconds on my blink, for example, and now when I have some overload, it will actually be longer. So here also the barrier, so it says 15.8 seconds now instead of 7.9 seconds. I see this with the other skills as well. When I press this, it says 6 seconds, now it's 12 seconds. So this is a bug with the overload passive right now, and this makes this clunkier than it should be. But at the same time, it is still such a crazy build. You just kind of go a little bit slower, and you have to be a bit more careful with the barrier. And occasionally your Ring of Flame might have a bit of a gap. But for the most part, it still works just fine. And if they fix that bug, it's going to be even crazier. Alternatively, you can also leave out this duration upgrade here on the overload. And then you don't have this cooldown bug, but you're also going to be a bit weaker. So it's going to make it more fluid. But at the very least, you can actually play with the cooldowns working as intended, basically. And for the rest of the setup, it's mostly just a bunch of passives that help us out here. So there's spell damage and energy. You want to pick that pretty early, for example. Here's also maximum energy. This is actually how I can stack up so much of it. So you see I have like 650. So this is thanks to some of those passives. You also have similar stuff here on the storm side. So you just try to pick up all of the energy stuff, and then whatever kind of gives you a damage upgrade as well. So here's fire damage, for example, that can be useful. Here's like a 1 point in combustion I have, is just 8%. Here's also the overload passive. So once you unlock that, you want to get this extra energy recovery for overload generated, for example. We generate more overload the more energy we have when we shoot the rolling magma. So you get first some refund from the skill, and then you get extra refund from this, for example. This is like a pretty important thing to pick up. And here the extra fire damage per overload makes it scale to the moon. As for the stats that you invest, you see it's this kind of like a mix between might, knowledge, and vigor. So this allows you to wear some of the heavier armor. Here's knowledge that can allow you to wear some of the caster stuff. I wasn't really sure where exactly to put the points here, so I kind of just even it out roughly with a bit of focus on might, and then vigor to get a bit of extra life here. But most importantly, we want to stack the resolve high because this has the fire damage multiplier here. So compared to the other offensive stats, you see that this is quite a bit higher. We have like almost 10% higher DPS, for example, with the thermic damage bonuses by investing into those two here. But you can also focus a bit more on the might if you want, or a bit more on the vigor, as long as you can wear your gear. And that's about it for the setup here. So I'm quite excited to see how this will continue, and maybe if there's a patch with the bug fix with the cooldowns, that would be awesome. But for now, I'm gonna have this character ready for whenever Act 2 comes out, and I'm gonna be blasting, obviously assuming that they're not really like changing mechanically how this works, which I don't really expect right now, but we'll see. So in a few months, probably we're gonna get the next update, and then I might also make an updated build guide for this whenever the time comes. So hope you enjoyed it so far. I wish you good luck in Titan Quest 2. Stay tuned for more videos, and I'll see you guys next time.